कथामृतम् तप्तजीवनम् कविभिरीरितम् कल्मषापहम् श्रवणमङ्गलम् श्रीमदाततम् भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जना. So the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Master's conversation with Prana Krishna is continuing. So we will start from the section where we concluded in the last class. So where we found the idea of that with our evolution in our spiritual journey, as we develop more and more devotion, the external paraphernalia, which was of utter importance in our spiritual practices, that starts falling off. The more and more the pure love develops. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna was indicating, that the aspirant at first has a vision of the goddess with 10 arms. There is a great display of power in that image. The next vision is that of the deity with 2 arms. There are no longer 10 arms holding various weapons and missiles. Then the aspirant has a vision of Gopala, in which there is no trace of power. It is the form of a tender child. Beyond that, there are other visions also. The aspirant then sees only light. So as we were indicating, that in our scriptures, for the ritualistic worship, there is a dictum, very nice dictum. What's that? Atmavat Deva Sevanam. That you need not bother about renouncing at the very beginning, because you cannot force renunciation. As we were saying, that what you resist persists. If you think that I have to renounce this, you will find it is almost impossible. That will linger on, because what you are resisting, that's always in your mind. All sorts of hatred. This, I find that there are some desires which I don't want, I hate. But what happens? I find they still cling on to me, because hatred is not the opposite of love. The opposite of love is indifference. Hatred is actually a negative attraction. That whom I love, whatever I love, I think of that. And whatever I hate, I think more intensely than the thing which I love. You will find in your life that hatred is more intense. So when I say these are the desires I don't like, I'm constantly dwelling on them, constantly thinking of them. And what you think, that persists. This is almost impossible. That's the paradox. So what's the way out? Think of something sublime. Try to spend more time on something sublime. Because as the mind cannot do multitasking, at a time it has only one thought. So if we can keep our mind engaged in something sublime, all our gross attachments are bound to fall off naturally. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the more you go towards the east, the west falls off, the west falls off naturally. You get rid of the west. You cannot push the west. The only way you can avoid the west is to go towards the east. The west automatically falls. So that's the idea of sublimation. And Atmavat Deva Savanam, this dictum is something which has that psychological understanding behind it. What's that? That whatever you like, you don't think of renouncing immediately. But instead of indulging in them directly, why not use those things as an offering to the divine. Whatever I like. I like wealth. Okay, I just don't adorn myself with the ornaments. I just offer them to the divine. In my mind, as a plan is there, these all ornaments, I will adorn the divine. And after it has been adorned to the divine, then you may have it as a sacred thing. So it has been sanctified. So whenever you wear, you always have that devotion, that it is something which has been sanctified by the presence of the divine. Whatever food I like, I can just go and have it directly. That will speak of my greed. But if I first offer it to the divine, still I am having it. But now I have the sense that it is a sacred food. It has been offered. And then you will find it is from your things of attachment that devotion is growing. As in the last class, we were giving that example, that a novice was asked to do the ritualistic worship. And he started his ritualistic worship, then he found that many of the things which he uses for the ritualistic worship, that has become the cause of his distraction. Like the perfume, we offer as one of the ingredients in the perfume to the divine. And that perfume is to remind him of his pre-monastic days. In the family, whenever there's a social gathering, people will use that perfume. They come and the fragrance is everywhere. And that will remind him of those social events. And he found that it is a distraction. Why they use all those things for the ritualistic worship? He never could understand that this is the cause of distraction. Now after few months, he found something different. Wonderful thing. What's that? Now as he has associated that fragrance with the divine, now this association has changed. Now he's in the marketplace. He has went for some shopping. He's in the marketplace. He's passing by a perfume shop. And the smell of the perfume in that noisy, busy place, crowded place, suddenly makes his mind calm. His mind becomes calm, and he finds that a sense of contemplation in that world of this action. Full of action is going on everywhere, and he finds that his mind is naturally contemplated. He thinks of the sanctity of the shrine even in that marketplace. So with the association, it has changed. So that's how the devotion works. So here that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. That at the beginning, as I most probably have the adoration for wealth and all, so I like to see the divine adorned with all those wealth, power. Well and good. Start with that. Let all your desires and passions get sublimated into devotion gradually. And as it happens, you will find your attachment for all the worldly glamours and this called glamours and the glories and the glamours of the world, they are naturally falling off. You need not have to force them. And you are developing more and more devotion. It's a very scientific way of gradually sublimating all your attachments to the love of the divine. And that's what we find Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. That at the beginning there is a great display of power. The next vision is that of a deity with 2 arms. There are no longer 10 arms, holding various weapons and missiles. Then the aspirant has the vision of Gopala, in which there is no trace of power. He is just a small child, an infant. We generally go with our hands spread in front of the divine. I want this, I want that. And if you go in front of the Gopala, you will find his hand is stretched, as if he is wanting. He is wanting our love. He is in the need of our devotion. Says, leave everything and come to it. It is he who is begging. We think it is we beg to the God, but actually God is begging. He is waiting patiently for us to turn our attention from the world to him. It is he who is waiting. That's why his hand is stretched. No stress of power. At last, when we realize that this world has to give me nothing, it's just a trash, and then gradually all this attachment starts falling off, and we develop this pure devotion without the attachment with any of the power or wealth or the display of this glamour and glory of the world. He has just removed all those things. There's no trace of that. And he has developed pure devotion. His passion has sublimated into devotion. So that's the thing which Sri Ramakrishna is indicating in these words. And then he continues with his conversation. Reasoning and discrimination vanish after the attainment of God and communion with Him in Samadhi. How long does a man reason and discriminate? As long as he is conscious of the manifold, as long as he is aware of the universe or embodied beings of I and you. He becomes silent when he is truly aware of unity. This was the case with Trailanga Swami. So at the moment we go to the realization, we become silent. Before realization, we are bound to go on having a lot of varied opinions, doctrines, dogmas, varied opinions about the ultimate nature of the divine. It's very natural. You may say, why? Because the realization alone is the criteria of knowledge. Without realization, there cannot be any knowledge. Conceptual knowledge without realization is no knowledge at all. The common example which we give again and again. The tasting of the mango. Suppose a man has tasted the mango and he goes and he reaches out to a group of people who have never tasted mango. And now he feels like relating the taste of mango to them. He says them, mango is very sweet and it has a very nice flavor. Now these people who have never tasted mango, they think we have understood. They try to relate those words with their available fund of experience. Now, one will be saying mango is as sweet as molasses and it has the flavor. Flavor sometimes can be related to a fragrance. It has a fragrance of jasmine. And someone says, no. It is as sweet as honey and it has the flavor of the rose. So why these varied opinions? None of them have tasted the mango. They are trying to relate the words with their available fund of experience and all the varied opinions develop. In the present world, all the fight in the name of religion is because none have realized. It's just they're all believers. That's what they say, that we are believers. We believe. Do you have any realization? No, our prophet said God is. But have you realized? Unless you realize, fight will continue. If you say that other religions are false, mine is true, you will find at last, even in your own religion, there are thousands of sects, thousands of denominations. Why? Because no man think alike. As long as it is a concept, you all are bound to a varied opinion, just like those persons who have not tasted the mango and trying to relate to the taste of mango by hearing the words from a person who has really tasted the mango. Varied opinions. Now, among those who have really tasted the mango, not tasted the mango, among them most probably one has written book on the taste of mango. A huge volume. And at last, somehow he manages to taste the mango. Someone gives him the mango, he gets it, tastes it. What he will do? He himself will first put into fire his own book. Why? He will say, he will understand that what I have written is all trash. The moment he tests, now he will find that what the person who have related those words after testing, he told the correct words, but none of us understood. And this person after testing understood. What he will do? He will become silent. He knows unless you test, the words can never help you to explain it. He is bound to become silent now. And what he can, if someone comes and asks what he will say, well, I won't say you about the taste of mango. Better you manage to get a mango and taste it. So because he has learned that the mistake he has done before tasting the mango, he has written a book on the taste of mango. And after tasting, he found it's a trash. Now he won't commit the same mistake. What he will say? I can show you the way that such and such place is abundant in mango. This is the direction you follow and go there and taste the mango. I can just show you the way. I can never give you the inkling, the idea about the nature of the taste of mango. So now you will understand that why a man of realization becomes silent. Because he understands that it is almost useless to speak the words about the nature of the ultimate reality to all who have not ever realized it. So that's the reason of the silence. He becomes silent. So how long does a man reason and discriminate? As long he is conscious of the manifold, as long he is aware of the universe, of embodied beings, of I and you. He becomes silent when he is truly aware of unity. So when you go to that realization, then you have realized, and then in that case, and there is no question of words. And that was the case with Trailanga Swami. Trailanga Swami was in Banaras. It's said that he lived for hundreds of years. He was a realized soul. He was considered as a living embodiment of Shiva in Kashi. When Sri Ramakrishna was alive, he met him, Trailanga Swami. Even with him, there was no conversation. Trailanga Swami never used to meet any people. But you know, the jeweler can really can recognize a jewel. A jewel, we may think it's an ordinary stone, but the jeweler knows that it's a jewel. He can recognize it. So when Ramakrishna went to meet Trailanga Swami, as he was not speaking, he was maintaining silence. Seeing Sri Ramakrishna, he used to have just a small box of snuff. He used to snuff some tobacco. And nothing else. He almost remained naked. Sometimes just a loincloth, sometimes even not that. Just like a small child without dress, he used to be sitting in the side of the Ganges. When Ramakrishna went, he somehow took out, that was the only possession he had, that snuff box, and offered it to Sri Ramakrishna. It was a surprise for all, because he never interacted with anyone. Why he did that? He realized that yes, this is a jewel. Only a jeweler can recognize a jewel. But he was silent. That's the thing he is indicating here. This was the case of Trailanga Swami. He was silent. Why? Because there is no reason. He has realized the truth. And after realizing, he has become silent. Just like once you have tasted the butter, can you relate the taste of butter to anyone? You know its taste. It is something which is comprehensible, but it is not you cannot communicate it. The taste of butter, the taste of clarified butter, that's the example Sri Ramakrishna gives in the Gospel. So the thing which you have realized is beyond attributes. The lesser the attributes. We never know the thing in itself. We always define a thing with attributes. Like the flower is red. Red is an attribute. It's its adjective. It is very soft. It is of such and such shape. But what the flower is, I can never know. My senses can only project those attributes with which I define that object. But the ultimate reality is beyond all attributes. So how will you speak about it? It's impossible. So they are silent. As Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel, in some other context, is giving a very nice analogy. That the two brothers, the sons of a person was sent to the Guru Griha Vasa, to the house of the Guru, of the spiritual teacher, to learn about the truth. So after years they returned home. the father asked one of the son, what have you learned? So he went on quoting scriptures. So he was just like an erudite scholar. He was going on quoting the scriptures to describe what's the nature of the ultimate reality is. And then he asked the second son. He was silent. Not a single word he told. And father immediately responded by saying that he is the silent one, who has realized. Because the ultimate reality is beyond mind and speech. You cannot speak a word about it. It is realized. It is something which can be realized, but it cannot be communicated, as there are no attributes. It is avang manasagocharam. It is beyond the mind and speech. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. Have you watched a feast given to the Brahmins? At first there is a great uproar, but the noise lessens as their stomachs become more and more filled with food. When the last course of curd and sweets is served, one hears only the sound sup sup as they scoop up the curd in their hands. There is no other sound. Next is the stage of sleep, samadhi. There is no more uproar. So, Sri Ramakrishna was a minute observer, and from whatever he observed, that became an analogy. It's a wonderful way, the simple day-to-day life, all the way that we deal with the life, he will observe, and that he will wonderfully use as an analogy for explaining the highest spiritual truth. So generally, whenever we go for some social gathering, first, that the people will be meeting each other. There will be some lectures, talks, and all this meeting with each other. It is very difficult to understand in the Australian scenario here, because even after the main program, when we are having food, that's the time for socializing here. We find all will be just with the food, with the plate in the hand, will be moving around, talking to each other. So these examples becomes very difficult to understand in the present Australian scenario. But if you just try to understand from the scenario of the days of Sri Ramakrishna, in the olden days, that first when you go for some social event, all will be meeting each other, and then the host will say it's the time for food, and they all have to take their particular seat. It's not that they will be moving around. The food will be served in the plate, and then they start taking food. And generally when they're taking food, they're not supposed to talk. They become silent. So no noise. And only when they're taking some delicious food, they make a sound in their mouth. That's his saying soup, soup. Maybe something liquid, something juicy they're taking. So it's almost silent. And after that, after the heavy meal, there is again the arrangement for having a nice siesta after heavy meal. So now they are all sleeping. There is no noise at all. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is using as an example. What he saw in those days, as used to be the scenario for any social gathering. Seeing that's the example which is giving, and is relating to that as you evolve spiritually, the more silent you become. All your so-called arguments, discussions, everything fall off. You go beyond all tarka. You become nirvitarka. Your arguments, discussions, all these things stop. You become silent. So that's what he is saying here. So again, let us read that paragraph. Have you watched a feast given to the Brahmins? At first there is a great uproar, but the noise lessens as the stomachs become more and more filled with food. When the last course of curd and sweets is served, one hears only the sound sup sup as they scoop up the curd in their hands. There is no other sound. Next is the stage of sleep, samadhi. There is no more uproar. So it leads to the silence. Many people talk of Brahma Jnana, but their minds are always preoccupied with lower things: house, buildings, money, name, and sense pleasures. As long as you stand at the foot of the monument, that is in Calcutta, there is one monument called Octal Monument. Sri Ramakrishna is referring to that. So long do you see horses, carriages, Englishmen and Englishwomen. So it was the time of the British. So that's what the people used to go for, just have a stroll, and they will see all those things because it was a British rule. So a lot of English people were there. So that's what he's saying. You see the horse, carriage, Englishman, Englishwoman. But when you climb to its top, you behold the sky and the ocean stretching to infinity. Then you do not enjoy buildings, carriages, horse or men. They look like ants. Just when you climb up in high altitude, everything becomes insignificant. So what's Ramakrishna is indicating? For us, the knowledge is just something like academic knowledge. It has not transformed our life. We read the scriptures, we go on discussing of the scriptures, but it has not in any way transformed our life. It has not become a part and parcel of our life. We haven't internalized the values which they represent. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say about them, in some other context he is saying, that the so-called learned people are like the vultures. The vultures soar very high up in the sky. They soar very high up in the sky. But all their attention is on the carrion. Somewhere some rotten flesh is there. So they're in search of that carrion, the rotten flesh. They soar their skies, they're flying very high in the sky. But their attention is on the ground where the rotten flesh can be found. So he's saying that the so-called learned people, with all their knowledge of the scriptures, they are like that vulture. They haven't internalized. They speak high, but all their attention is just to something like this rotten flesh, something very worldly, something which is like filth, considered as a filth for a spiritually evolved soul. He has gone beyond all those attachments. So as you progress spiritually, the more the vista of the spiritual dimension of your existence opens up, you start broadening your perception, and your life starts building on that broadened perception of the spiritual domain of your existence. The all other, these things become trivial, the worldly things. They naturally fall off. As we were indicating, that renunciation cannot be forced. It comes naturally. As the spiritual dimension of our existence, the portal of the spiritual dimension of our existence opens up, I will find that other things are bound to fall off. That our condition is just, we can relate with another story, very interesting story. It is an analogy of Plato. Very nice analogy. It is the analogy of 5 cavemen. The 5 cavemen, they were enchained in such a way that they were sitting in the cave facing the wall of the cave. They never knew what's outside the cave. So they were just facing the wall of the cave, and outside the cave there was a road. And on the opposite side of the road, one side is a cave, on the other side of the road there was some fire, always lit. That fire was lit there. And now that road was used by the villagers to go from the village to the marketplace. So throughout the day, and even in the evening, in the dark hours, the people will be passing through that road, and the shadows will fall on the wall of the cave. That's the only thing these 5 cavemen can see. They were enchained in such a way they cannot turn their heads. They can just see the wall of the cave. They were enchained in such a way. So they never knew the external world. For them, all the shadows throughout the day, the noise they hear, because all the people are going through that road, all this humming noise coming from there, and the shadows which were moving on the wall of the cave, that was the only reality for them. That was the only reality. And then one of these 5 cavemen, for him, he was released. His chain was opened, he was released. He turned around and he was amazed. For the first time, he saw the sky, the field, and this entire world, this infinite, as if there is a huge expanse of land, the greenery, just went out, he was running, he was ecstatic. And why this man of realization, there is no use of speaking, Then when he came back after seeing all those things, he thought, let me relate my experience to these people. He told, see, what we were thinking as reality is a mere shadow. It's not the reality. The reality is something behind. The other four cavemen, they were still enchanted. They thought he has got mad. He's speaking some nonsense. They never gave any importance to his words, because they have never related to the experience which this one who has been liberated, who has just now experienced. They could never in any way understand what he's saying. He thought he has gone mad. But for this man who was till now enchained, has been released, for him, can he anymore remain indulged in that shadows? No more. They become something trivial. They're just shadows. For him, the reality is outside. This vast world, that's the reality. What he thought as reality is just shadows. The entire world is just a projection of the divine. One has realized that these all become shadows. They become trivial. They become something like ants, something very trivial. They fall off. They are no more going to bind him. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. Many people talk of Brahmajnana, but their minds are always preoccupied with lower things: house, buildings, money, name and sense pleasures. As long as you stand at the foot of the monument, so long do you see horses, carriages, Englishmen and Englishwomen. But when you climb to its top, you behold the sky and the ocean stretching to infinity. They do not enjoy the buildings, carriages, horses or men anymore. They look like ants, become insignificant. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating in his simple words. All such things as attachment to the world and enthusiasm for woman and gold disappear after the attainment of the knowledge of Brahman. Then comes the cessation of all passions. When the log burns, it makes a crackling noise and one sees the flame. But when the burning is over and only ash remains, then no more noise is heard. Thirst disappears with the destruction of attachment. Finally comes peace. In simple words, he's speaking of that profound realization that when you know they are the shadows, they're bound to fall off. This comes the cessation of the passions. I know these are all mere shadows. As Swami Vivekananda is giving a very nice example. In so many contexts we give that example. That as a wandering monk, he was traveling through the deserts of Rajasthan in India. And as he was walking for quite a long time, for hours, he was thirsty in that hot, sultry weather. He was thirsty. And he was in search of water. And suddenly he saw a huge reservoir at a distance. And now he felt like proceeding towards the reservoir so that he can quench his thirst. Now as he proceeded, he found in no way he is coming near. And then suddenly he found it disappeared. And then the realization dawned. What's the realization? That till now he have heard of mirage. He has read about mirage in his textbook. He had a conceptual knowledge of mirage. He thought, I knew what mirage is. But for the first time he realized what the mirage is. Till now it was just a conceptual knowledge. Today it has become a realization. Now what's the difference it makes? So as long as it was a conceptual knowledge, he was dragged. He was dragged by that mirage, though it is illusory, because he thought it to be something real. But once he have realized what happens, next day again he is traveling through the desert. Again he sees that huge reservoir. As he is in his body, mind, senses, the hallucination still continues. He still sees it. But there's a big difference. Yesterday it dragged him. He was as if dragged by that reservoir. Today it has lost its hold on him. He knows it's a mere projection. It's not in any way a tangible reality. It is virtual. So now you will understand how all the passions falls off. You need not have to renounce. the things will be renouncing you. They fall off by themselves. It becomes something spontaneous. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. So when the log burns, it makes a crackling noise. So when the process of our purification is going on, there's a lot of so-called noise is there. These discussions are there. Our arguments are there. We are yet to evolve to that realization. So that's what he's saying. That when the log burns, it makes a crackling noise. And one sees the flame. There's a lot of hustle bustle. But when the burning is over, only ash remains. Then no more noise is heard. Thirst disappears with the destruction of attachment. So with the fire is like thirst. You know that just the way the fire can never be appeased. In Sanskrit, the fire is called anala. This word itself gives the meaning of what fire is, anala. In Sanskrit, alam, the word alam is used in the sense of satiation. That when someone is serving you food, you are satiated, you say no more, no more. That is alam, enough of it. And when you use the prefix an before that, it becomes analam, anal or analam. Means that which can never be satiated. The fire, the more you pour oblations, the more it flares up, isn't it? The more you pour oblations, the more it flares up. So desires are like that. But once you have realization, the fire has become ash, no more fire. Now if you pour oblations in the ash, when I was pouring oblations in the fire, it was flaring up. Now if I pour oblations, some fuel, in the ash, will it flare up? No. So that's what he's speaking of. All the attachment has fallen off. Thirst disappears with the destruction of attachment. And then comes the real peace. That we are, for such a long time, we are having this backpack of desires, worries. Desires is always associated with worries and tensions. So when the desire is there, till it is fulfilled, we have that worry, we may not get it. And when I got the object of my desire, still with that worry continues. I may lose it. You will find in our world, whether it is relation, whether it is wealth, whether it is position in life, these are the desires, objects of desires. Till I got them, the worry, I was constantly worried. Will I get them? Once I get them, the worry still continues. Can I retain them? They may be lost. So they're always associated with worry. The moment the desire falls off, the worries also are no more there. And when the worry is no more there, you are at peace with yourself. For such a long time, we were carrying the backpack of all these worries and tensions that I got so much habituated with it. I never realized that I am having a weight. I'm carrying a weight in my back. And for the first time, somehow I kept it down. And then I realized, oh, what a relaxation. A let go ensues. So that's what happens with a man of realization. For the first time, he finds that this backpack of worries and tensions he was carrying, that has been kept aside. And he then enters into a state of perpetual bliss. And that's what he's saying, that finally comes that peace. The nearer you come to God, the more you feel peace, 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 supreme peace. The nearer you come to the Ganges, the more you feel its coolness. You will feel completely soothed when you plunge into the river. So that's what. Our spiritual journey at the beginning may be quite challenging, full of struggles. We are as if trying to fight against the wave, cross the wave. You know, when the small fishermen go into the deep waters for fishing, they have a small boat. In India, we find this poor fishermen, they have a very small boat. Only one person can just row the boat. It doesn't have the capacity to take 2 persons. So it has a small boat. It's like a yacht. With that, they want to go to the deep waters for fishing. And it's a sight to see. they will try their best to cross the waves. Maybe one or two waves somehow they manage, and then the third huge wave comes, they throw them, they again come back to the shore. But they are very much assiduous. They have a lot of patience and perseverance. Again they will try. So second attempt, third attempt, at last they can break that wave barriers. They break the wave barriers, and then they are in the still waters of the ocean, enjoying the fishing. So that's what the entire spiritual journey is. That at the beginning there may be a lot of struggle, challenges, but once we go to that realization, go to the depth of our being, it's like the calm waters of the ocean. All the waves just are in the surface. Once we can go beyond that, it's just the peace and this calmness of the ocean, the tranquil ocean. That's the real nature of the core of our being. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. The nearer you go to God, the more you go near, the more you feel peace. Peace, 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 supreme peace. The nearer you come to the Ganges, the more you feel its coolness. You will feel completely soothed when you plunge into the river. So, if you are in India, then you will realize these words, the meaning of these words, what it speaks of. In the hot, sultry weather, it's so unpleasant. And now you start proceeding towards the Ganges, and suddenly find the cool breeze coming. The more you go nearer, the more you feel that coolness, and at last you take a plunge in the river. What relaxation. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying. The world is like that hot, sultry weather of the hot, sultry weather of the tropical summer. And the more you are going to near the river speaks of, the more you are approaching the spiritual dimension of our existence, the more your life becomes peaceful. The more all the turmoils, all the dualities of life, they start falling off. And the more you enter into the state of perpetual bliss and peacefulness. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is indicating. But the universe and its created beings and the 24 cosmic principles all exist because God exists. Nothing remains if God is eliminated. The number increases if you put many zeros after the figure 1. But the zeros don't have any value if the 1 is not there. This is the example, Sri Ramakrishna's unique example. So after 1 you go on adding 0. The value goes on increasing. And if you remove that 1, everything becomes 0. What it speaks of? The entire existence which I feel is not divine. Once you go to the realization and again come back, then you find that what I negated as something worldly, as something non-divine, is actually the projection of the divine. It is a projection of the divine. The divine is appearing as this world. It is a superimposition. Just the way in the twilight hours I see a snake in a rope. Does the rope really, the snake exist? No. It's just a superimposition. Similarly, the entire universe is a superimposition on Brahman. So after saying that the world becomes trash, you become more and more absorbed in the tranquility of the divine. And then the next moment, what he's saying? That the universe and its created beings and the 24 cosmic principles all exist because God exists. Why is he saying this? That it's not running away from the world. Our spiritual journey for the time being, maybe I need to go have a retreat, to go away from the world. Even in the Bible, we find Jesus, before he started preaching for 40 days, he was totally cut off from the society. And then he's coming back, being illumined. So that's the idea. First you negate the world. Go to the realization. And then you find the world is nothing but the divine projected as the universe. So then you come back and find it is a God who is being projected as the universe. So if God is not there, the entire universe is not there. Just like when I'm seeing a snake in the rope, if I remove the rope, the snake is also not there. So without God, nothing exists. Everything exists because of the divine. So God is just like the one, and the entire existing is like zero. The zeros, if I go on adding zero after the one, its value goes on increasing. Remove the one, everything becomes zero. What a wonderful example. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying, that everything is adhyasa, the superimposition. God alone exists. Everything else is a mere superimposition. So though and at the beginning I negate them all, but when from realization I come down, I find everything is pervaded by the divine. The divine alone exists. I start seeing the divine everywhere. As in the Gospel in some other context, Sri Ramakrishna is saying, just in the rainy season, the way you see the lawn is drenched with water. You just try walking on the lawn, it is drenched with water. Similarly, I see the entire world drenched in consciousness. So a simple words he is saying. It is just everywhere it is consciousness and consciousness alone. That alone exists. As in Chaitanya Chaitamrita we find, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying what? After going to the realization, Jatro Jatro Netro Pade, Tatra Tatra Krishna Sphure. So wherever my eyes fall, I see Krishna blooming up from each and every point of this existence. Krishna Sphure, he blooms up, he pops up as if. So that's the realization which Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of here. That one has become everything. Remove the one, nothing is there. That without that one, nothing has any existential value. It's all just mere zero. The Master continued, there are some who come down, as it were, after attaining the knowledge of Brahman after Samadhi, and return the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion, just as there are people who, of their own sweet will, stay in the marketplace after the market breaks up. This was the case with sages like Narada. They kept the ego of devotion for the purpose of teaching men. Shankaracharya kept the ego of knowledge for the same purpose. So some take the path of devotion to go to that ultimate realization. Some take the path of knowledge, that also take to the ultimate realization. How both take to the ultimate realization? In the devotion, what happens? When I am devoted to the God, whatever the concept of divinity may be, my devotion becomes so intense that my mind becomes fully focused on the divine. All other things starts falling off. Because the mind, the more it is focused, the more other distractions are bound to fall off. And at last, the last thing to fall off is the ego. That I am this body-mind complex. A part of the mind is always hooked to that idea. This ego, that everything. I like this. I hate that. I am afraid of that. See, what our thoughts are, our entire existence is all linked with that I. This limited body-mind complex. And this ego is the thing which is always engaging a part of our mind. In devotion, what happens? When our minds become intensely devoted, at last, the total absorption of the divine speaks of falling off of the ego. As the mind starts getting detached from other things, the last thing to fall off is the ego. It falls off and you become one with the object of meditation. That is called this samadhi. So in bhakti, that's how you get identified with the object of your meditation. And once you get totally absorbed in that, what has happened? The other things has all fallen off. Even your ego has fallen off. Everything has fallen off. And in jnana, what happens? With my mind, I have understood that it is the ego with which all my desires are linked. So, what it's like, that as if for ages together I was feeding so many birds. Every day they used to come, I used to feed them. And one day I thought I won't feed them anymore. I stopped feeding them. So after a few days, what will happen? The birds will get the feedback that we are not going to be fed anymore. They will start falling off. They won't disturb you anymore. And then still that it's not just renouncing. The discrimination there is followed by abhyasa. What is abhyasa? Constantly I am contemplating. I am that absolute reality. As if you are hammering the hub of the will, which is the ego. At last to get rid of that. So all the spiritual practice, whether it is jnana or it is bhakti, whether it is devotion or it is the path of knowledge, the ultimate goal is to get rid of this ego. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, this rascal ego. Even there's one poem of Kabir, very nice, that small couplet, that he's saying, the last two lines are very important, that everyone says that such and such people are of low caste. In India, the caste system was there. But the lowest of the lowly is the desire, chaha. As long as the ego is there, the desires are there. The moment the desire falls off, I become one with the absolute reality. In his words, is chaha tu hai nichan ati neech. Oh desire, you are the lowest of the lowly. Are main to Brahma hu. I am the Brahman. Agar tu na hote beech. If you were not between me and my God, I would have been one with him. It is you who are the lowliest of the lowly. Because you somehow came in between and made me forget my real nature. So whether it is jnana or bhakti, the falling off of the ego, which is linked with all the desires, is the ultimate goal. When that has happened, then you can merge with the absolute. There is a nice way of understanding that, in a very simple way, that whatever may be the spiritual journey, that a jnani is always contemplating on the fact that I am Brahman, I am the absolute reality. And a devotee is contemplating on the fact God is, I am, and we are in eternal companionship. You find almost is the same. Both their contemplation, when that reaches a stage, when the mind has become eka vritti. One is only thinking of God and another is thinking I am one with God. And that thought has become the only thought in their mind. The mind cannot continue. Because the polarity has been resolved. As we told, in this world everything is a flow. Why water flows? Because there is a difference of level. From high level to low level the water flows. If both the levels are same, the flow will stop. Why electricity flows? There is a difference in potential. If the potential in both the ends are same, flow of electricity stops. Anywhere, that world, everywhere you will find the flow is there. And that flow can be stopped, can be resolved when the polarity is resolved. So similarly, the mind is a flow. You find it's constantly jumping from thought to thought. That's what unceasingly it is going on. If I can stop the mind from jumping from thought to thought, if I can really keep it in one thought, then it becomes that the second sutra of Yoga Sutra, this Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The moment you can have one thought, the thought stops. It goes to a state of thoughtlessness. And then what happens? The moment it goes to a state of thoughtlessness, the mind is like a prism, which is just, if white light falls on the prism, it breaks into the spectrum of 7 colors. Similarly, the ultimate reality, in association with the prism called mind, is projecting this universe. So the moment, because of that one thought, going to the state of thoughtlessness, the mind has as if fallen off. What will happen? The entire spectrum will merge with the white light. The entire spectrum of the world of name and form will merge with the absolute reality. You go to that realization. But there's an interesting thing. For the first time when you go to that realization, as your mind is saturated with that one thought, so the mind is disturbed by 2 things. What you are consciously thinking, with that the mind is agitated. And another, we all will realize. And what is coming from the subconscious mind, that is again disturbing my mind. You will find that when I try to meditate, why I cannot meditate? The one thought in which I am trying to keep my mind, that is that broken, that continuity is broken, because something from my subconscious mind comes up and breaks that concentration. So at present, as my subconscious mind is full of varied thoughts, so some of them come up and break my concentration. But for this man, who by keeping his mind in one thought has went to the state of thoughtlessness, his subconscious mind has already been cleaned, has been cleansed by this one thought. By assiduous practice, he has already cleansed his mind. His subconscious mind is full of that ekagra vritti, that one thought. If he is a jnani, it is a thought of I am Brahman. If he is a devotee, it is a thought of God. That one thought. And that has taken him to the thoughtlessness. But his subconscious mind is full of that one thought. So for the first time when he goes to that state, this from the subconscious mind, the thought of God, or the thought that I am the absolute reality, that thought comes and breaks the state of thoughtlessness. He comes back again to this world. A spiritual aspirant, once he goes to that state, develops a tremendous hankering to remain in that state of thoughtlessness, because he finds everything is a trash. So there are many who simply, their body falls off in 21 days by constantly trying to remain, that again the thought of God comes and breaks his state of nirvikalpa samadhi, again he tries. So that way he is increasing the latent impressions of thoughtlessness. So he is clearing off all the thoughts with the thoughtlessness. At last a stage comes when there is no thought at all. Even that single thought has been cleared off by the state of thoughtlessness. And then the mind falls off. In the scriptures, in Patanjali Yoga Sutra, they say very nicely that mind is something which is a conglomeration. Now just the way you leave something, you just drop something on the top of the mountain, the gravity will naturally pull it down. So he's saying, for a man of realization, the more he tries to stay in that state of thoughtlessness, a time comes when all the things with which the mind has conglomerated, they all start falling apart. The mind is totally dissipated. And there is no coming back, no return. He merges with the absolute. But he says here there are few. For no reason, they have some unbound compassion, unconditional love for the humanity. They think, if I merge with the absolute, who will give the news of this domain of existence to the world who is merged in ignorance? So out of that unconditional love, they have nothing to get back. They out of unconditional love, what they do? They try to retain that God consciousness. Though the mind tends to go to that state of thoughtlessness, they bring it down. By constantly thinking, you will find in the life of Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he is going to Samadhi, he has instructed others that whenever you see in that state, take the name of God. Or he will take some simple resolution, I want to drink water. With that he will bring his mind down. Why? Because of that unbound compassion. If his mind continues in the state of thoughtlessness, his body will fall off. So he brings it down again to that God conscious level. Below that it cannot go. His mind has already been cleansed from all the worldly passions. It has already been cleansed. The only thing that is retained is the God consciousness. He comes down to the God consciousness to instruct the people out of unconditional love. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna is saying here. There are some who come down, as it were, after attaining the knowledge of Brahman, after Samadhi, and return the ego of knowledge or the ego of devotion. Whatever path they have chosen, accordingly they put the ego. Just as there are people who, of their own sweet will, stay in the marketplace after the market breaks up. This was the case with sages like Narada. They kept the ego of devotion for the purpose of teaching men. Shankaracharya kept the ego of knowledge for the same purpose. So, these wonderful teachings of Sri Ram, the simple words, he's speaking of the highest truth, the profound truths of the Vedas and the Vedantas. That's why Swami Vivekananda used to say that Sri Ramakrishna's teachings has even transcended the Vedas and Vedantas. It's so profound and so sublime and so transcendent. So we'll continue with the remaining portion of his conversation again in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.